Hello and welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann, also called H.
I'm Ryan Quintal, also called Q.
You sound sad.
H, as you know personally, I have discovered that I am living in a suboptimal reality, and that there is a virtual reality that I can visit at any time that is vastly more magical to my horrible regular reality.
There are vastly more Beat Sabers in that reality than there are over here.
One might say 100% of the Beat Sabers exist in the other reality, and now I don't know if I can go back.
Well, luckily we do tape this show in virtual reality. I am, of course, represented by a small anime schoolgirl, and then you are an offensive ish Ugandan Knuckles. We really have to make up our mind on whether or not that one is actually a racist meme.
Yeah, I'm trying not to have it be racist because I do feel this is kind of how I personally identify. This is my own body. This is what feels right to me. So it is not meant to offend. I apologize if it does. I've been wearing this headset now for about, clocking in at about 128 straight hours. So at some point I'm going to need to take this thing off and really hose it down.
Well, what have you experienced so far?
So I got the Oculus Rift S, and I picked up, I played an intro, say, hour or so of Lone Echo per your suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good. Played some Beat Saber. And you know what? This one is, it's so simple and probably totally obvious to people that know it and play it, but hey, Minecraft is lit in VR. It's awesome. I couldn't describe it. I was in chat with my brothers, and I was like, do you know how big a Minecraft block is? Because I do. It's about a meter wide and tall, and it's about a meter cube, and just having that scale of like making a house, but then like feeling like you're inside of it or whatever. It's somehow incredibly novel. I was a PSVR owner. So impressed with the Oculus, and I'm thankful that the S has done away with the USB port cameras that need to be set up and everything. It makes a big difference, and I love not having to wear headphones. It has speakers that kind of blast themselves towards your ears. They're not too loud, but it means that like if Jessica says, "Hey, dinner time" or whatever, or "Hey, what are you doing down there?" I can answer her. And actually, when you visit the menu and stuff, they do pass through of the cameras, so you can actually see where you are in your own room when you hit the menu button. So a lot of nice features. If you were holding off on an Oculus Rift headset, what a wonderful time to jump in.
Now, I have an old Oculus Rift. I don't want to say the original model because I know that they sent out a lot of like Kickstarter backer versions before hitting 1.0, but it is the non-S version before they started labeling it anything further than just Oculus Rift. And I was a little bit like, oh no, now there's a better one out there. But then as I've been reading more about it, there's like
trade-offs,
kind of an equal number of improvements and drawbacks. And so I feel like I'm okay with what I have right now, although I would not mind freeing up a couple of USB ports, that's for sure.
Yeah, for minimum for doing some audio would be really wonderful. Yeah, it's a cool device, and I think what did they got rid of the OLED, which, anecdotally, since I don't have a side-by-side, I can't really tell, but I'm sure is a drawback there.
But it's a higher resolution, so, what you miss in the OLED, you kind of make up for in the resolution. I don't know. One
of the things that's weird in that I played my brother's Oculus Rift, which is the sort of normal canonical Rift, the eye width adjustment is gone. That is now entirely in software, and people say that it doesn't quite live up to what the mechanical eye adjustment could do. So yeah, I don't know if I have unusually close eyes or far eyes or if they're just right, but so far so good.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I should say before recording tonight, I made one of my favorite dishes, which is a North African shakshuka. It's a great kind of tomato egg dish, but there's a step in the process where I have to add both paprika and cumin seed into the pot all at once. And from that point forward, for the rest of the evening, my nose is just miserable It's running and sneezing and stuff. And so I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm allergic to either of the ingredients, but every single time it is just, I'm going through tissues like, well, I can't think of any good analogies.
Good. You're going through tissues and then we'll drop it right there. That's good. You're clearing it out. That's probably good for your digestion system. I now eat, this is like inside baseball at this point. The listeners are like, get to the video games. But my breakfast at this point, almost every day, is 2 hard-boiled eggs with salt, pepper, and sriracha on them. Gets you need some spice to get things going.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not one to shy away from spice. I am notorious for liking very spicy food. I would regularly in college, I would order out, go out to the restaurant, bring back leftovers, and then any roommates who tried to steal my food from me, which, just desserts, I would find in the morning in the kitchen crying. Be like, oh, what's up? And he's like, I tried some of your food. It's so hot.
Why did you do this to me? Sirs, you're right.
That's right. Well, anyways, let's get to some video games. I imagine you're going to be pitching some VR stuff today. Is that an inclination that
it's not, but I mean, certainly all my inspiration this past week has been VR, so you can imagine that, yes, VR games are in our future. My pitch for you today is a reverse tower defense game. Now, maybe this is akin to
tower offense.
A tower offense game. Yes, very good. So think of it like maybe a little, we'll call it a StarCraft-esque speed of base building, where you are essentially building up a barracks of technology and defenses, and you assemble and manufacture waves of troops. You can group them together into those waves and then choose the order that you're going to deploy the waves. But you're trying to create troops with a sufficient amount of technology. Maybe you're under a time crunch, and you're trying to get to the enemy crystal, but you're doing it from the other side. You're trying to break through the tower defenses.
Okay, and we're starting the clock there. So it seems to me, in a regular tower defense game, it's more of a numbers game than it is a strategy game, but maybe I'm just not very familiar with the genre. So what I'm thinking is, if I was in control of the enemy waves, I would just send as many as I could muster right at the beginning, kind of Zerg rush them, and kind of barrel on through. But if you have more experience with tower defense, if there are different enemy types, or if there's specific combinations of enemies or spaces between enemies, I always felt like the spaces between enemies were kind of like a kindness to me as the player, to give myself some time to strategize and regroup. But what could we do that would be more interesting than just hammering the button as many times as possible at the very beginning?
Right, that's a good question. So I think you would have to be creating a system of buildings or whatever that are outputting not just troops on command, but more like troops per minute or something like that. And those troops kind of pop out with, or maybe you can create troops fast, but those troops, to outfit them with the proper weapons or gear or whatever, they have to kind of walk through other buildings in your line. So the more you make your assembly line complicated, the sort of more powerful your troops can become. But then I think you're kind of trying to store up, ideally, waves of troops and deploy them in the right order of okay, every time you deploy a group of troops, you get a peek as to what the enemies, what the defenders' defenses are. Potentially in between your deployment rounds, the defender gets an opportunity to build up or repair. Yeah, I think it would be interesting to both have to manage sending in rounds so you know what sort of defenses you're dealing with, and also delaying your sort of, quote, time to troop by powering them up.
Interesting, I like that. So you're kind of playing a game of chicken as far as I'm building up as many troops as possible, and it takes time to build them up, but I don't know if the time that I've allowed my opponent has given him enough time to build up adequate defenses. And so, sending those scout units in, maybe there's really cheap units, or maybe if you just want to send one expensive unit as a scout, you can kind of make it all the way through the maze before getting kind of zapped at the end. And you can get a really good feel for, how the entire labyrinth is secured.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. Some ability to There's that tactic that many people in StarCraft use where you just kind of make a troop and you immediately just send them out to go look for the enemy base.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially you're sending out some early troops, you know that they're going to die. Maybe you in certain levels you can do challenges where you can only manufacture a certain number of troops or have a certain number of groups. Like potentially you could use a tactic where you're sending out a lot of small groups and groups have to be spaced a certain amount of time apart, or you're sending in like 2 massive waves. So you kind of are playing with the idea of what is the group combo and what troops are going to die just to take out some of the preliminary defenses that are set up.
It would be interesting if there were some more expensive units, and all of this is kind of like wagering time more than anything, more than resources specifically, because as time goes by, your enemy is getting closer and closer to becoming kind of near impenetrable. So if you spend like hours waiting, then by the time you attack, it doesn't matter what size your army is, like there's no getting through what they've built up in that time. And so you're kind of wagering, resources are kind of a measure of like how long it takes to produce things. So maybe there are some more expensive units that you can use to potentially bypass in kind of a riskier way, like somebody who can drill through walls but is very vulnerable. And so if you drill through a wall that is not defended, then you can make a shortcut for all your troops and kind of skip, a third of the maze. But if that guy gets spotted, then he's dead within a minute.
Yeah, and maybe if there's some way, maybe like getting certain amounts of like penetration, what a quote, being able to get further into the enemy base is how you sort of accrue points and currency. So you have points where you need to, in order to keep manufacturing troops, you actually need to make a certain amount of progress into the enemy base. And then when you do, you get a new technology and say you can create a troop that for a little extra time can temporarily disable an enemy tower or whatever. So there's kind of that build phase and deploy phase, the same way you'd get on the defensive side, but this time it's like muster army, send army, more than it is like collect currency and upgrade and shore up defense.
Maybe there's like 3 checkpoints in every maze that award you, once you pass them, you can build like a hero class, all of them kind of upgrading in their efficiency. And so, one of the potential strategies is that you can send a strong army in there early just to try to make it to that 3rd checkpoint, even before you're prepared to make it all the way through, just because you really want that powerful hero. And then hopefully the hero can kind of carry the smaller army that you're able to send through because you spent a lot of units trying to get to that place in the first place. But, if there are, if you do spend those units early and they're defeated, then you're in a really tough place. And so it is like a big risk that you're putting out there, but potentially could be a kind of game-changing reward.
Maybe the deployment phase of the troops, there's some level of like selecting your groups and selecting where you want them to go, almost pathing style. So they kind of path through things themselves, but you have some manual control. And those points, those checkpoints you talked about, are on unoptimized routes, right? Where the routes where they're going to encounter even more defenses instead of going straight for the heart of the thing. And each sort of level could have, the hero unit that can take over a tower, disable a tower, that checkpoint's over here. The hero unit that can cut through walls, that checkpoint's over here. But I know that if I get him early, then I'll be able to open up a new path and sort of get the 3rd unit sooner.
Interesting. I like that. Just out of curiosity, again, because I'm not big tower defense player, are there usually more than one route? I kind of always imagine the genre as being like, you create a circuitous route because you want to slow the enemy down, but essentially there is kind of one pathway that everyone is following.
So if you play, if you haven't played it, the one that I do recommend, the sort of canonical one at this point, Defense Grid, The Awakening, I think that there are times where, and maybe more specifically, I'm thinking of Dungeon Defenders is a great example of this, of sometimes you have a very exposed objective and enemies can kind of filter in from one of multiple points, and as the waves increase, new entry points become available. maybe that's sort of what you're doing on the attacking side, is you're just breaking down initial barriers, and then every time you go to deploy troops, you have new points of entry. So you're not always walking sort of the same path to get through the same amount of towers. You're also trying to break down those points of entry or reach those objective points so that you can create new points of entry for your next wave of troops.
Interesting. So I'm going off of my memory of reviews of a game that I never played, but there was a Double Fine game originally called Trenched. I think they changed it to Iron Brigade. Does that sound right?
But it was like a thing.
Yeah, it was a game, a tower defense-ish type of game where you were playing as like mechs during World War One.
Oh,
and
cool.
So it had some of that kind of down in the, like, get your feet on the ground type of action, along with the more kind of overhead view strategic element. And actually, that's one of the things I really liked. Another Double Fine game about Brutal Legend is that essentially played in its combat sequences as an RTS game, but you were controlling a character who had kind of a character action style of gameplay. And so having a character that maybe during your final push you can take direct control of and play strategically, and so it's not just a numbers game, could be interesting as well.
Yeah, some sort of, or maybe that's essentially like you have the more RTS style deploying of the troops, getting through the base building and manufacturing, and unlocking those hero units kind of gives you that Iron Brigade sort of manual control level of things. And so now you get sort of the best of both worlds of like, I'm just trying to unlock individual hero characters, and maybe you can only control one at a time, but you could also employ a friend to be able to take over manually hero characters, and you can have multiple simultaneous human characters and swing the things in your favor.
All right, well, we're out of time on that one. Why don't we come up with a name for it?
Oh man, this is one of the first games in a while that I felt like I stayed so practical that it feels like it could actually happen, or already has happened in some way. Your point, tower offense, is pretty good.
It's not bad.
I don't know if anybody's taken it, but it's definitely on the nose, but that's kind of what I like about it.
All right, I think that sums up very well. And as an episode title, it'll be easy to go back and remember what it was.
That's right.
There were some even 2 or 3 episodes back where I'm just like, what was that?
Okay. yeah. Well, sometimes we prioritize the pun over the actual description.
No regrets. All right, so my game today is a VR game, so you're welcome.
Beautiful.
So what I have is a game where you are in an arcade. It's kind of life scale. And you can approach and play several arcade machines, and each one will be programmed to have its own kind of special game in it. There's no hint that there's anything more than this, but if you experiment around with the program, you can get the arcade games to interact with each other by doing specific things, like using the kind of House of the Dead gun to shoot things on screens of other games and find that it actually works. And so, those types of interactions occur, but again, there's really no hint up front that anything like that is possible. It's just purely about the discovery from the player. So I'm going to start the clock there and see what kind of interesting ideas we can whip up.
Maybe there can be a narrative wrapper here of like, you're an arcade repairman and you have the ability to take some of the weird bespoke arcade parts of machines and affix them to other machines, or install other machine software. It's sort of intra-installing software between, or extra-installing them between machines. And that way you could, like, it would be very... Isn't there a game? I forget what it is. It might be called Brewmaster or something like that, where essentially a guy is serving like Budweisers, and you have that. I think we've all played an arcade game where there's a sort of bowling ball controller. Do you know what I'm talking about here? It's like a giant track ball is all you're manipulating.
Okay. I can get the picture in my head anyways.
Yeah, so I wish I could think of it now. But the ability to take like a fighting game control layout where you get like 6 buttons and put that onto a game that was only ever like 1 or 2 buttons before, and suddenly new abilities become unlocked and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. One of the things that I was thinking of when I was creating this is like, we've all gone to arcades before and have kind of had those, you pick up the gun from one of the systems and suddenly everything looks like a target, every screen that you see in front of you, and just think like, wouldn't it be funny if this worked in that way? And so, finding these kinds of like secrets and interactions, I obviously that's really easy to do when you have a gun, because, that's obvious what kind of interaction that would have with other screens. But I'm curious, in more traditional stick and button type control schemes, like what could we do to create these interesting moments of discovery?
I think the ability to like move the software around is interesting to me, and like could be used as an excuse to not only just do different control schemes, but maybe access like a different way of playing something. Like, what does Excite Bike look like if you put it on like inside one of those complete surround sound like racing cabinet things where you're sitting in the entire vehicle? Does it take on a new perspective in that way, or does it just give you new sort of sets of things that you can do within the game? So it's almost like creating your own remix of these games.
Maybe you're able to kind of like pull out the wires of a system from like a panel on the side. And so it's not something you would immediately think to do, but you can start to kind of intermix some of them that way if they have compatible ports.
Oh man, and daisy chaining systems together to get your own combining of elements of things, of like, oh, if I wire this to this, I get this, but if I wire this through this other thing and then put that in, I get even a third thing. So you end up like, you start off with a very traditional looking arcade, and by, everybody's room, almost imagine that like Oculus home space, right? Where you can decorate it in any way you want. You kind of make H's arcade in that way. You're like, well, I've got Tekken on a cocktail table in 2D because I wired it through Mortal Kombat or something.
Yeah. So, there's all sorts of different like Wreck-It Ralph style interactions that you can have here. I'd love to see like a vertically scrolling war shooter, like one of those planes flying through, like the 1940X series is set against like a racing game with the track underneath, and you're shooting out the other racers or something like that.
Yeah, you could take like a Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic had an arcade game?
There were some
Maybe
arcade
not.
games, yeah.
Okay, so if you have like a Sonic the Hedgehog arcade game and you like wired into a Marble Madness, that actually probably Sonic has basically already lived in that incarnation, but it would still be fun.
3D Blast, right?
Now that I think about it, Marble Madness is probably one of those ones that I had a trackball in some of its incarnations in arcades.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then, I guess interesting control schemes is also something to think about here. So like Tempest had its like rotating knob that you can rotate, and I wonder like what that would be like when applied to other types of games.
Yeah, and I love all those light gun games. I mean, whenever I see a light gun game at an arcade, it is calling my name for whatever reason, probably just American gun culture doing it for me. But, now when you go into a Dave & Buster's, if you will, you see like their Guitar Hero guitars set up. Like, I know a lot of people have done, explorations of what Guitar Hero means, but there are also like giant Angry Bird games where there's like massive touchscreens and stuff going on. I think now kind of sky is the limit in terms of what method of control inputs plus sort of mashups of software that you could do. Just imagine like taking any arcade game and just plugging it into a pinball table. Could it like transform the pinball table?
This is really interesting, but it's making me realize that so much of the fun of arcades is kind of the physical interaction with these very intricately built machines. And I wonder how much of that would be lost in VR, and whether this would be more interesting as kind of like a pop-up museum type thing, like something people can go to in real life.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing. I mean, you would have to fake some of the software in real life, right? Which is kind of the, well, I mean, I guess if you can build it in VR, you could build it in real life, but you could do really silly things where just by hooking up or impossible things where hooking up a pinball table to something like a millipede or something will net you like suddenly the pinball table, getting a higher score on that can like make, you can control the millipede that way. And so you can do sort of controller remixes. Yeah, Tempest is a good one where if you combine that with like Mortal Kombat, does getting a good score in Tempest give you like combos or something in Mortal Kombat? And you can find out like logically, oh, well, I know that pinball machines will overtake the controls of whatever I plug them into. And I know that, older games overwrite newer games. So like Mortal Kombat will downgrade into an 8-bit style, but like 8-bit games won't like scale up into a Tekken thing. And by those like fake little laws that you set up, you can do remixes that way.
And kind of like NES Remix, that series that Nintendo played with for a little bit. I don't know they've really done anything with that recently. They should probably get back into that. It was kind of a cool idea. But there's ways that you can use the skill sets of other characters when applied to other characters' games in interesting ways that are unexpected.
Yeah, I love the idea of being able to plug in something, I don't know, even like Galaga and put it into like Dragon's Quest and get like an animated storytelling experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, there was a Space Quest or something like that. There was one that was set in a sci-fi environment. So, that would be kind of funny, almost in those ways of like, this plus this equals this other thing.
I think whether you go for this in real life, and I think you could hook it up in such a way where it feels real in real life. I think one thing that could be fun is to just do not really rip-offs, but like games that are inspired by those other games, but not quite those other games. I think like you could do that. We all know, okay, there's guys showing up on screen and you're shooting them with guns, and sometimes there's a zombie in there. You're like, oh, this is the House of Dead that they've put in here. So you could kind of skirt the copyright issues, because I'm sure like this thing would not feel at home without a Star Wars arcade mashup thing.
Absolutely. Well, that could be fun to come up with all those parodies. All right, that's all the time we have there. So let's create a name for it. I feel like naming the arcade would be the way to go on this one, right?
Should you name it after yourself?
My name is kind of nondescript. I don't know. I guess a lot of the arcades are just kind of like Chuck's Arcade.
Right.
Dave and Buster. Buster's pretty unique.
Well, oh, okay. I've got something for you. What do you think of Mashers?
Mashers, that's nice, because it's like a mashup and button masher at the same time. So
Mashers Arcade.
That's a good one. Also sounds like kind of a naughty teen movie.
That's right. I like the part where the girls are in bikinis.
PG-13. All right, well, that's a good one. Mashers, let's go now to our own inbox and see what our community has written for us today. This one comes from Mike Esguerra, who emailed us to say, your recent Elf on the Shelf pitch reminded me of a game that I wanted to try with friends in real life, but that could be developed into a video game. In the game, players would begin in random points in a busy real-life location, like a shopping center. The object of the game is to eliminate the other players by taking photos of them without being seen, and posting the photos to the whole group. Along the way, players must not arouse the suspicion of bystanders or local security. That's great. He says, I have a great title suggestion, but I've forgotten it. Anyway, I'm interested to see what you can make of the idea. That's wonderful.
Mike, join the club.
I'm kind of disappointed with myself that I've not come up with this before. This is a great idea. All right, I'm starting the clock on this one. We're going to have fun with it, I'm sure.
This is great. It's like, it's a fun photo-based take on kind of tag, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Or like those zombie type of games that you play in a university campus.
Oh, I don't know of these. What are these?
Like some people are alive and some people are zombies, and specified by whether they wear their like orange headband on their head or their arm. And the people who are alive have Nerf guns, and they have to perform like certain missions throughout the day. But also they have coordinated missions, I should say. Usually kind of when everyone's off school, then they get together to run these missions and try to survive along the way. But part of the fun is that you are playing 24/7. And so, as you are walking to class, you have to keep an eye out for the zombies who are trying to ambush you at every turn. So yeah, it's a very popular thing on university campuses to play a little bit of competitive gaming in between classes.
I love the idea of this, whatever this app is that takes the photos, that is like proof positive, for it to have some sort of history. So you just get with a group of friends the most strange photo library that you've ever had on your phone of just like, oh, here's Ryan like getting a smoothie. And you're like, what? Just from far away. The zoom function will never be better used on a camera.
Yeah, I love how well this scales to different types of groups and different settings. So, I would think like if you had 5 players in a grocery store, then this could totally work. But if you also had 50 players at Disneyland, then this could totally work as well. And, just enough to where you can really hide in the crowds. Maybe even it could be not necessarily among friend groups, although you could play it that way, but you could just have kind of sign up for a day, say, I will be at Disneyland 2 weeks from now, so I want to play. I'm going to put my, upload my photo. And so 2 days beforehand, people get an array of photos of people that they're looking for throughout the day, kind of like a Where's Waldo. And then, so you're kind of studying that. And then when you have your day in the park, then you look for anyone who's acting suspicious, which at a theme park is about everybody, or, people who are looking at their cameras. And yeah, I don't know, that could be a lot of fun.
The anarchist inside may wants to say, just make this, you get a prompt of like, find somebody eating ice cream and get a picture of them without them knowing, but that's probably a little, it's either too easy or too creepy.
I do like the premise that everyone involved is playing the game. I don't necessarily want to sick people on just taking photos of strangers.
So I will, because it's a little bit hide and seek. So I think one thing, ready for this? This is a potential mind bender, but you can be eliminated. But you can get back in the game by getting a photo of your friend taking a photo without them knowing it. So if you can get Inception, if you can actually get, there's Ryan trying to take a picture of Mike, who's trying to take a picture of John, whatever, that can be, either that's worth crazy bonus points and you play it off of like that, like, it's 3 strikes and you're out to be caught, or if you're caught trying to do it to someone else, that's an instant elimination, or maybe something where you can also catch the person who's trying to catch the person.
That's great. I would think that there would have to be logistically some level of support back at the base, back at the whatever company is producing this to try to validate photos, because I'm not sure if, it'd be fun. So you upload your profile photos beforehand, and those are the headshots that people will use to recognize you, but they don't necessarily know what you're wearing, kind of like a game of Hitman. And so, but at the beginning of the day that you're playing the game, you have to get somebody to take a full body picture of yourself. And so, you upload that to like just the people who run the game, and they can then validate the photos that other people send them. So, obviously if you take a picture of somebody from the side and it's kind of blurry because it's zoomed in and cell phone cameras still can't zoom for some reason, it can be difficult to determine whether or not somebody is still in or whether they're out at that point. I wouldn't really trust machine learning to be able to, at this point at least, be able to validate properly. Accurately. Yeah, but if somebody knew exactly what you're wearing and were able to kind of cross-reference that with a photo that you yourself had sent in earlier, then I feel like that's a more fair way to do it.
So here's 2 potential twists on that, where like, if you take a picture of somebody, let's say it's a group of 4 players, if you take a picture and you claim it's one other person, it gets submitted to the remaining 2 players to confirm.
Okay.
So the other 2 players have to be like, yes, that is that person, they're out. And then, you do the single confirm and then down to it's, 1-on-1, and maybe it sends it. Maybe it still sends it to the whole group to confirm. So even when you're, quote, out of the game, you still get to actively confirm. But if you're eliminated early, maybe you're eliminated just means you can't win. But one thing you could do is if everybody has a little headshot, like you suggested, you can report in the little app or whatever some small details. Like you can press hat and blue and tell everybody, oh, they're in a blue hat right now. And now that person, right, if they either that person does not get to see the details that have been reported about them, or they can see the details and choose to then change their appearance to continue to avoid suspicion.
Yeah.
It's like someone knows you're in a blue hat. You're like, oh.
Right. One tricky thing about having players validate the photos is that then everybody else knows where you are, because they can kind of like, if they know where the opponent, where the person who just got photographed was, then they kind of know where you're shooting them from. And so I don't know if that would necessarily be, maybe that's part of the strategy, is you can kind of put some time in between you taking the photo and uploading it.
If you tap on the person's face, then you could just serve up everybody else a really cropped in face view.
Maybe there is another way to validate things by like using the GPS tags. And so maybe while everyone is playing, their phone is kind of constantly in GPS mode. And if you take a photo, then it can kind of like determine where the photo is. And if that matches where the opponent is located or was located at that time, then that counts.
Right. Oh, interesting. So everybody has to share their location. So if you get a photo and it's properly validated, you would need a pretty large play space, I think, for the phone to differentiate on the pinpoint exact stuff.
I mean, it could just be kind of a honor system thing. If you're playing between friends, I think that would totally work out. If you have 5 players, that would be just fine. But again, if you're playing with a larger crowd, then I guess the questions of validation get a little bit more complicated.
I think two of the things that would be fun about it is, number one, if elimination does not mean you're out of the game, and like elimination just turns you into incentivizing the torpedoing of your fellow contestants of like, well, I know Ryan's in a red hat, so I'm gonna tell everybody what he's wearing or whatever. So you can kind of be devious in that way, or you could just maybe set a time limit and have like phases of the game, sort of a hide and seek-esque thing where like, okay, you have 10 minutes to get to a location, and then after 20 minutes, you all come back together and you actually see like everybody's photos get shared at the end of the 20 minutes, and you get to see who actually won.
Yeah. You know, I was just thinking also interface wise, you could have like a crosshair on your phone monitor. And so phone monitor, whatever, the screen. And so it looks like you're kind of like shooting at them with like a sniper rifle or something as a way of kind of selling the assassin like pitch here. But it would also be a way of making sure that whoever you're taking a picture of is always like center frame and not like they didn't just happen to be in the photo and you were really taking a picture of somebody else.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Because if you get a wide enough crowd shot, then chances are somebody is going to be in it.
Right. So you're incentivized to maybe there's like one thing a computer could suss out is if there are multiple people in the frame, it can just like reject the photo.
Yeah. So really the safest place to be would be like in front of a mural of a lot of faces.
Right. But then of course it'll be like that's good, right? Because people will be like, oh, go. The most wily players will know the system and will try and skirt it in that way, but also, you know, you'll know, okay, he knows what he's doing, so I'm gonna go look for him around the around the stupid area where everybody else is hiding.
All right, that's it. That's all the time we have. Let's name it. Again, Mike says that he was not able to come up with a name, or that he had one, but he forgotten it. I should say, to give him credit for that. But let's see what we can do.
Is there a name for the catching a pedestrian in the act sort of thing? I feel like the word voyeur comes to mind.
Catching a pedestrian in the act.
Like just catching him, like taking a picture of a pedestrian without them noticing you. It feels like something we should have a word for culturally.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know if there is. Another name I was thinking of, but might not be very applicable, if that is a word, is prosopagnosia, which is face blindness, essentially. But again, it's kind of the opposite of what this game is about, and it does not condense well to something that you would say in a conversation. We should play some prosopagnosia.
Yeah, though it sounds cool, it does sound like spy-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, you know of face blindness, though, right? It's where people can't really tell one person from another.
No, I didn't know that was even a thing.
Oh, yeah. It's
That's horrible.
Not a super common condition, but it's kind of like, if we look at like trees, then we can tell that they are different from one another, but we couldn't really point to anything in particular that we could use to like identify the same tree again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how some people operate with faces.
Huh. Oh my God. Sorry, that has me shook. I'm trying to think of like what the Jackbox games would call something like this. I feel like making it feel like a party game would be a good angle. Like if it's called Face in the Crowd or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Or crowd surfing.
Crowd surfing's pretty good. Crowd surfing is pretty good.
How about Snap Judgment?
Oh, that's pretty good, because then your friends have to confirm. They have to be the judges for the snap.
Yeah.
That works.
Okay.
We barely got out of that one alive.
Yeah, geez, Mike, can't leave us hanging like that. A really wonderful idea. I like that one a lot. That is Mike Esguerra sent us an email to playwrightcast@gmail.com. You can also send your own pitches into playwrightcast.com/pitch or tweet us at playwrightcast.
Special thank you for sorry, I know this is a plug, but there's a reality TV show just called Busted on the Job, Caught on Tape, and that is just the most reality TV show title I have ever heard in my entire life.
There's also Busting on the Job, which is the Ghostbusters documentary. So.
Oh, yeah, I love it. We get really behind that. Or is that in fiction documentary?
Well, I don't know. It makes me feel
Right.
good anyways.
It does. Special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song, Hello World, off the album Blue Noise. It's very good. And go give it a listen. And hey, while you're at it, why don't you check out the rest of the Cane and Rinse network, where you have great shows like Cane and Rinse, Sound of Play, and The Sausage Factory. I think the latest thing that's happening on Cane and Rinse right now is Aladdin? And the
Aladdin games.
The Aladdin games, that's right. So if you played it on Genesis or Mega Drive, as our friends across the pond might call it, or Super Nintendo, they've got you covered in every which angle they can. So
I had a dream about that last night, actually, that I was at an arcade and there was an Aladdin arcade game, and I wasn't confident because I'd never played either the Super Nintendo or the Genesis games, and they are very different games. And I couldn't identify which one it was, so I was trying to use contextual clues.
Hey, if you get it, also, I hope I'm not embarrassing you here, but go to playwrightcast.com and check out Mr. Hamann's The History of Video Game Music. He's got this amazing project he's putting together. It's a black and white grid of stuff that's not there yet, and then some things lighting up in color to go see. You're doing giant mixes of a bunch of years of video games, right?
That's right. So it's taking all of the significant games that came out in the particular year and trying to like remix all of the music into kind of like one large collage of sound and music. And so they often come out to be like more than an hour long. And so you could just kind of sit back and let the memories flood back over you.
Your artwork, your Photoshop jobs on this are awesome. He gave me a little peek of them in advance. I was so excited. And if you've ever go and Google like a year, like 2003 in video games or video games in 2003, Google will give you results at the top. And there are some years that are going to be just bangers. I can't wait to hear 2013, 2007, 2003. Those are all going to be really fun.
2015 is still my favorite year in video games kind of all time. You get Bloodborne and The Witcher 3 and Life is Strange. It's a great year all around.
So yeah, so there's a sum up there. It's right in the header. You can get to it. Go check it out. And what else? Go review us on iTunes. Hey, that's what you can do if you love the show too. So there's never ending things for you to go do when you're not listening to Playwright or while you're listening.
Yeah, so we are coming up pretty quick on our 2 year. That'll be just in a week or two from now. That's exciting. Well, we'll circle back for that. But until then, Q, why don't you bring us a mini pitch to go out on?
I've been holding on to this one for a while, and I think it would be good. A Downwell spin-off that is a Nintendo collaboration as a Super Mario water level.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye.